Susan is the author of 14 nonfiction books that focus on the gender divide, how women are positioned in our society, their innermost feelings about themselves as daughters, mothers, sisters, wives, friends, rivals, colleagues, and lovers, all of the different roles. But today we're focusing on her newest book, which is called Estranged, How Strained Female Friendships Are Mended or Ended. Susan's work has been featured in the New York Times, Forbes, Elle, and she's appeared on many programs, including the Today Show, CNN, and NPR. Susan is also a longtime writing professor at Marymount Manhattan College, and she also teaches at the Westport Writers Workshop and has served as a literary panelist for the international, she's as an international Emmy judge as well, and vice chair of Harvard's Women's Leadership Board. And did I mention she also writes fiction? So she is a busy writer. So Susan, welcome. We always start, I start the podcast with asking a question that I think is really pertinent for this conversation too, by asking, do you have a bend in the road? Did something happen in your life where you were going along and something happened where it kind of changed the path of where you thought you were headed? And you can include the topic of this book or you can make it completely separate.
Yes, the answer is, I think it would be hard for most women to have not had a bend in the road, based on the thousands of women whom I've interviewed in the aggregate. And I have had several bends in the road. And of course, that makes me so curious about women everywhere in contemporary American society and what it is that makes us think that if we are the good girl or the pleaser, that there won't be a bend in the road.
Right. And you had a really interesting story in one of your interviews about your mother's passing and how significant. I mean, that's significant across the board, but just the timing of that loss was interesting.
Well, my beloved mother died 7.5 years ago, and when she died, I was really so surprised to see what friends were really there for me and those who weren't, and how I would have predicted it would be different. It would play out differently than it did, that it would have been different. And so I said to my agent, I really want to write this nonfiction book because there's nothing out there about female friendship breakups and the estrangement. There are books about female friendships, including breakups, but how we estrange. And I interviewed 25 women before I pitched it. I always interview a very diverse group of women in every way, age, race, ethnicity, level of education, religion, where they live across the country. So for this book, I interviewed women from their early 20s to their 80s. And I was listening to women say that they really had trouble with some of their friends, but that they were very reluctant to break up and very worried about the failure that it presented, that it was a sense of shame of having not done well with the friend. And then so many explanations about, oh, we share a history. Oh, we were in kindergarten together. Oh, our mothers knew each other. Oh, our husbands are friends. I can't turn my back on her. We're part of a group. All the reasons that we know so well. And the women really weren't quite ready to estrange and wanted to estrange. But my agent said to me, you have 3 novels due and to write. And after that, it is when you can go back to this. So when I went back to this 5 years later, after I wrote the Palm Beach novels, what was so fascinating is that COVID had occurred. The Me Too movement had really changed a point of view for many women, and women weren't saying the same thing to me. So when I did my other 125 interviews, because for my nonfiction, I usually interview 150 to 200 women, and I try to do a questionnaire of about another 100 women in the back of the book, as I did here. I was listening to women who felt empowered by their estrangement And so it was really trending differently after years of women feeling that they couldn't really leave a toxic friendship.
Right. And we're going to talk about that whole process in a bit. I love the way you've sort of constructed this book. You described the 7 types of friends. So you're saying you had all of these conversations and you had to organize the book in some way, right? So there are 7 chapters that each sort of comprise the 7 different kinds of friendships that you describe. And I want you to tell us about that. But also, I think one of the best things about the way you've done this is storytelling, right? I think we all remember things better when we hear it in story form, when we can very much personally relate to what that person is saying. So you really start every chapter with a very personal account where we're all like, oh my gosh, I know I have something like that. So how did you decide? Tell us about these 7 categories and how that came to be.
That really was the result of listening to the women. And I kept seeing different patterns, these 7 patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And so that became the template of the book.
Mm-hmm.
And I also spoke with my editor about having both sides told, which is not easy to get. So, the estranged friends or perhaps reunited friends, depending on the story, were not, I didn't think 150 women would want to do that, or even 75 women. But per chapter, I have one long story where I call it She Said, She Said, where
Right.
both sides get to describe what happened. And those really are like fiction. I mean, although they're based on what really happened, and this is nonfiction. And of course, every interviewee in this book, all identifying characteristics are changed. So these are anonymous interviews. But what really struck me was how emotional these experiences with our best friends or closest friends are. This is not just, the friend I see in Pilates and maybe once in a while we have coffee, or the friend I know because her daughter and my daughter go to kindergarten together. These are truest, most deeply invested friendships, really a dyad of a very intimate relationship.
Right. And was it almost like, it probably felt like therapy sometimes when they were, right, they're very passionate telling you the stories. And if these people are so passionate about this topic that they actually want to engage and maybe be part of a book anonymously or with the real name, like that's a big deal. So were some of these conversations kind of surprising, like how intimate they got, or were some people trying to be more matter of fact? Was it different? I guess different with every person.
Very different, but what I saw as a common thread was the longing for these friendships. And while as I said before, estranging is a powerful tool if we need it and sets us free to have healthier friendships after we leave a friendship that is no longer healthy, there's a tremendous amount of grief and loss attached to the end of these friendships.
Right. And I feel just those foundational friendships, like you were saying, sometimes they are built on proximity, growing up in a neighborhood, or who your college roommate is. But those, I mean, for me too, the most passionate, conflicted things that it's been so hard to let go of are those foundational ones. I would say up to age 18 or 22. And it just almost, it all makes you feel like you're taking away part of your identity by taking away some of that foundation. And you just have to sort of accept that, we all change and evolve, sometimes together and sometimes apart. And that's not necessarily a failure, which is nice.
No, but what I would say, Roberta, is that these friendships end up really being in trouble and breaking up in 2 ways. Either it's cumulative, and there have been problems for, recently you've noticed your friend isn't really there for you. She's lied about something, she's betrayed you. We'll go through all the reasons that, it's an egregious situation and no longer a happy friendship. So, or there's one inciting incident that is so demanding and heartbreaking in some instances that the friend says no more. And that's,
Right.
you know, that's the deal breaker. So
Right.
I was looking at that as well.
Right. So can you walk us through these 7 different kinds of friendships?
I can, although I would really like to mention a few because.
Oh, of course, of course.
So the faithless friend, which kicks off the book, I think we're all familiar with this kind of friend. This is the friend where the two of you are doing very well, and then either a third party or something very new in one of your lives, maybe you decide to live together, and then she announces that she's actually gotten into grad school on the other side of the country, or you and your friend decide that you'll move to North Carolina in retirement, and then your friend bails, or you and your friend are sending your 5-year-olds to the same summer program and then she bails, but something where it's changed. Or in many cases for women of all ages, there's a love interest that appears, or a divorce or widowhood that takes place, and you're no longer on the same page, and there's a third party or a third experience that somehow wedges the relationship, and then the balance is off completely. So that's one kind of friendship. And then I've categorized and put in a chapter and created a chapter around a rather new kind of friendship situation based on the last 2 elections, and even vaxing, where disparate values, just different values, are enough to break up a friendship. So women who say, I wouldn't have cared who my best friend voted for until the last 2 elections, now find it a line in the sand. Or a lot of young women said, you know, my friend won't get her kids inoculated. I am a nurse, I'm a doctor, I can't believe she won't do it. How can I be with someone like that? So where you no longer really see the world the same way. And that was, I thought, very interesting.
Right, absolutely.
And I have a chapter that will be, I think, familiar to all of us, and that is the green-eyed friend. And that's the friend where we all know jealousy is rampant among women because we live in a patriarchal culture where women are mostly compared to other women and really compete with other women. So we're always told we live in a society where there's not enough pie. And when there are limited goods, even if your nature isn't to be jealous, and some of us are more jealous than others, then it ramps up because we have this false sense that if your best friend gets the raise, you can't get the raise. If your best friend is pregnant, what about you? And we have to stop thinking that way in order to have more opportunities in the world and also as friends.
Right. And what about the you know, like the friend who her mind just works different in terms of communication. They're in the moment, they don't have the same need to text every day or to communicate. But like when you sit down with them, it's like you just pick up where you left off. It's one of those things where there's not a rift per se, but one side might want more communication, and then the other is just, you know, their heads just work differently. Do you just sort of change your expectations for a friend like that?
Yeah, understanding and acceptance go a long way. On the other hand, if the friend is really demanding and you're not texting back or expects more of you, the give and take of these friendships is critical.
Right.
So that's what I'm really saying. So if your friend really doesn't give back and you feel you do all the giving and you travel to see her, she never travels to see you, then after a while it wears thin. Excuse me. And that's what we see. We see where it's okay to have distinctive styles, but if it isn't feeling like an equal friendship, it becomes a problem.
Right. And in the case where you don't have a big blow up, like you were explaining with, where there is a huge incident that can be a game changer, but that just that whole thing where you're not quite sure. So it might be not that your friend is ghosting you, but let's, you know, that term friendship is in a constant state of repair. Through deep friendship, sometimes you do want to do a check-in. So, you know, it's hard to know when to kind of do that breezy check-in just to make sure, because sometimes we can offend or hurt someone without even realizing it, and other times it can just be completely in our own heads. So do you ever do like sort of the check-in with your close friends if you sense there might be something, but you're not aware of any particular incident?
Do women do that?
Mhm.
Yes, but women really spoke about the hierarchy of friendship. In other words, they said that they felt they were less important as they grew apart or
Mhm.
as their lifestyles were no longer in sync. That's
Mhm.
very important for women. Women really like to be with mirroring friends, a friend who has the same way of life, same
Mhm.
interests, same experiences at the same time. So sometimes, like, I interviewed a few young women who said, look, my best friend got married and moved to the suburbs, and I'm still here, a single woman in the city.
Mhm.
And I don't really understand why she has no time for me. And then the women who moved to the suburbs and have little children say, I don't know why this friend doesn't respect my need for, you know, the time. I don't have the time for her anymore. Why doesn't she get that?
Mhm.
However, what both women and both sides of that story would end up being in many cases is that the mirroring friend is more significant. So
Mhm.
if you have 3 children under 5, it would be easier, it would be shorthand to be with someone else in a similar situation.
Mhm.
And likewise for a woman who might very well choose not to be married and have kids and
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
really involved in her career and her single life. And she would like to be with women who reflect that.
Mhm. Right. So I'd love to talk about you. The whole section on the final section is called like how we defriend, and you have two different chapters. You have the breakup, ghosting, and successful estrangement. So I'd love you to tell us some of the accounts of and just how you sort of counseled people or gave advice on how to go about doing that, making that
Well,
break.
per chapter, so we have all these narratives, and then I look at pop culture and famous female friends, and I look at some research that's been done on female friendship, and I talk to a few experts, and it's all looped into the book. But the ghosting chapter was very curious to me because I was hearing so many women say, women don't like conflict, they don't like
Mhm.
confrontation. And so the women were saying, I just didn't text back, I just canceled plans. Or she canceled plans. After a while, I knew the message was, I'm not really there for you in the same way.
Mhm.
So that's how we often leave. On the other hand, several interviewees described a conversation where they said that the friend said, this is no longer working. And
Mhm.
there's the estranger, the person who starts the breakup,
Mhm.
and the estrangee, the person who is at the receiving end of the breakup.
Okay. So it actually is an intentional conversation in some form.
For some of the women, they would sit down, but for the most part, there was ghosting and just a pulling away until the message became apparent.
Right.
And there were even a few, screaming matches where one young woman told me that she had plans with her friend. Her friend said, I can't do it tonight.
Mhm.
I have
Mhm.
to study. And so she thought, all right, well, I'll go out with some other friends. And there was her friend with a different group,
Mhm.
having really lied to her. So
Yeah.
any kind of betrayal, big or small,
Mhm.
is critical to the health of these friendships because we expect so much of our closest or best friend.
Right. Right. You did so much, you have so many statistics and interesting research from your study. Do you want to share any of those with us?
Well, let me tell you what I found. I found that 88% of women in this study, in the women whom I interviewed, and also the women who answered my survey, my questionnaire at the end, said that they'd had a problem at some point with, a close friend
Mhm.
or closest friend. And 75% of the women told me that they feel more obligated to stay with a best friend best female friend than they do to stay in a romantic relationship or
Hmm.
a marriage. And 61% said that someone, that one of their a best friend had done something really terrible to them.
Mhm.
And 63% of the women said that they had a friend who broke up with them. But 79% of the women told me that being estranged felt really like the right move, despite how hard it could be at times.
That's a pretty high number.
Yeah, I think so.
And you were saying before, when you do make that break, it does open up more headspace and emotional space and actual time in your life.
It really does. Time is always at a premium in our fast-paced society. And women say, I had no more time for that friend. I wasn't really rewarded, nor was she.
Yeah.
And now I am more discerning. I pay better attention, and I'm actually thriving with healthier friendships.
And I also think a lot of people say, oh, you can't make friends after 40 or 45. And I mean, that to me is really unfortunate, because I feel like I've met so many great people, like, at work and like at the theater and.
Oh, of course. And I also think that that is not really how it plays out, because women reinvent themselves every decade or so. So longevity really contributes to our search, our constant search for new and healthy friendships. So, I mean, women of every age want to belong, or many hope to belong to a community, and community changes. If you have children, they grow up and you move on if you retire. Meanwhile, when you're entrenched in the workplace, it's really great to have friends who are also working and those who work with you. So every stage of our lives, we seek out meaningful friendships.
So connected with that is you have a section on sisters. So that's, for a lot of us, if you have a sister or a sibling, that's maybe the longest relationship you have in your entire life in terms of years. So tell me about that. I know you have a lot of intense stories about that. I think I got lucky because my sister and I we're very, very close, but we're very different. So then that's, we're not like fighting over clothes and boyfriends and all of that. But I completely understand what you were describing in your.
Well, what was the reason I wanted to include a sister story per chapter is because so many of the women with whom I spoke said, oh, we were so close. People thought we were sisters. We were always mistaken for sisters. And many years ago, Roberta, I had written a book called Sisters Devoted or Divided. And in that study, and among those interviews, I heard the women who were no longer speaking to their sisters really hoping to have very close female friendships, to really forge that path. And those who were so close to their sisters said that there was no need for a close female friend in the same way as for women who are not part of a female family. They didn't have sisters. So I said to my editor, I really think that we should listen to one, I should listen to and write up one sister story per chapter. And what happens is that the friends whom we choose are our fictive family, and they're by selection and choice. And the sister situation is that our family is mandated and dictated to, this, and our mothers, the implicit or explicit message is that you are sisters and you will always be there for each other. So I think that difference is very significant in terms of a breakup. Because the sister breakup, there's always the mother, the hovering mother, and her expectations. Whereas a friendship breakup is very much about our choices and the commitment that then dissolves. The other thing is I look at, when I said pop culture, I look at television fiction, streaming fiction, and as I said, celebrity women. And a very famous sister duo was Jackie Kennedy and her sister Lee Radswell.
Mhm.
But actually they fall into the thieving chapter in my book because Jackie basically ended up with Lee's boyfriend, who became her husband. And yet here they are out in public all these years later. When Lee Radsville died, I read very carefully what was written about her. And it was mentioned by a few journalists. And I thought that was really interesting that she was the sister to the side, obviously, although they started as both very, unusual, beautiful, talented sisters.
Right.
And that the Onassis triangle was really something in her,
Mhm. Right.
understandably.
Absolutely. Oh gosh. Oh my God. Yeah, and that's like the ultimate foundational friendship in a sense, the sister, but like you're gonna try to salvage that, the sister relationship.
Oh, yeah, they
Yeah.
definitely tried, but who knows what really went on, behind
Right.
closed doors.
Right.
But
Right.
some famous friendships, I mean, when I did the research, Liz Taylor and Debbie Reynolds were great
Mhm.
friends. And then, of course, Liz Taylor married Debbie Reynolds' husband
Mhm.
after her own husband died. And
Yeah.
so that was a bit of a blow, and they didn't speak for many years. And,
Mhm.
more recently, just a few weeks or months ago, I read in a few places that Blake Lively and Taylor Swift no longer speak.
Mhm.
And, everyone pays attention to how women treat each other
Mhm.
and who the famous women are.
Right. And even on like the smaller level with all of us, if you have if you're kind of doing a friend breakup with somebody in a friend group, then it gets awkward. Can I invite this one or is
Very,
that one? It's kind of on a tiny scale. It can be so awkward. Or if you get divorced, and it's the same kind of thing where everyone divides up.
and then I interviewed older women. One woman told me that she and her husband, they had both worked hard, they got to a retirement community. They were having the best time. They made all these new friends. They went out with couples, and her husband unexpectedly died, and she was really shunned. The women who had been her friends as couples
Mhm.
everyone took her out once and then sort of dropped her as if it was just an obligatory step. And then she tried to get into the divorced and widows group,
Mhm.
and the message was, there are enough of us. And it was very hurtful. But we
Wow.
have to stop thinking that way. That goes back to the limited goods theory, the not enough
Mhm.
pie. We
Right.
have to be inclusive.
Right.
I'm sorry, my book just fell.
Mhm.
Yeah, we have to treat each other with respect. And actually, throughout my book, women spoke of not feeling respected enough in the friendship
Mhm.
and how really significant that is.
Right. Was there any particular interview that really kind of stayed with you and haunted you, something you hadn't heard before?
Yeah, several. I found the stories to be intriguing, and some of what the women reported really riveting. I mean, there's nothing more amazing to me than how women really feel, the faces we wear versus how we truly feel.
Right.
Um, I was very struck by the in the she said section by a pair of former friends where one still hoped the friendship could work, and the other said at the end of her side of the story, she was great, but it remains over.
Okay.
I thought that, and I also interviewed a young woman who had really broken from her background, the religious beliefs and the cultural beliefs.
Mhm.
And her best friend, they'd even gone to school together in college,
Mhm.
really adhered to them,
Right.
followed them. And how painful it was when they finally realized
Mhm.
that their outlooks were so different that they
Right.
really, but they
Right.
actually sat down and they had a conversation,
Right.
because most women just, as we said, do
Right.
the ghosting thing,
Right.
the slow
And
fade.
and did that go well, the conversation? Even though it ended it, was it kind of
It was probably a relief, and
yeah.
women really speak of how relieved they are despite how complicated it is to
Right.
leave.
And then you are going through a grieving mourning process, right? Like if it is that kind of friend, and that's different for everybody, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I look and, among the research I did and referenced is the work of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross,
Mhm.
who wrote about, the 5 stages of dying, agree, well, and how relationships are as significant as really losing someone. And
Right.
we can really apply it to
Mhm.
this study
Right.
because there really is a period of loss,
Right.
even
Absolutely.
if we're lighter for it.
Right. I want to, we have more conversation, but I wanted to just open up the, I'm going to allow everybody to unmute themselves if you want to. We'd love to hear any comments or questions, or if you have any experiences that you'd want to share or questions for Susan, we'd love to hear you. Okay.
Hello?
Yes, Carol?
I'm
Yes.
trying to get my video on.
Yeah, we'd love to see you. There you go.
Not tonight. It's on? No.
Yes, yes.
I don't
We
know
can
why
see
it's
it.
not coming on. This is,
Oh, you just came on there. You just had the video on.
let me see. I am? All right, I don't see it. It's not showing.
Okay.
All right, you can hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Um, I basically live in New Jersey, and I have a second home in the Villages in Florida.
Mhm.
And I kind of go back and forth, 1 week back and forth. It's been hard to make any friendships down there because I'm transient. This latest friendship I was so excited about. I mean, I met this gal playing pickleball. She's athletic, and she's a transplant from California. I just found her fascinating, different from the average person down there. And then she started with the political comments,
Mm-hmm.
kind of harsh,
Mm-hmm.
very left extreme, which I'm not,
Mm-hmm.
kind of balanced in the middle. And I don't know how to handle this. She's not texting me as much as she did. I mean, I don't know who she's gonna find down there who's,
Mm-hmm.
connected to her value system.
Right.
I'd like to be friends with her. I'm not sure how to handle this part.
Ooh.
Well, as I said, there's a whole chapter on having a very different value system today politically. And I think the salient question is, can you overlook this for the importance of the friendship? And can you stay away from each other's politics in order to preserve the friendship?
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, people can. And in other interviews, the women said, I can't do it.
Right. Did you bring that up at all, Carol, when she would, kind of go in a certain direction? Would you, even in a funny way, just say, oh, no politics?
The relationship is so new.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
Right.
so excited about finding a friend down there to do things
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
I'm going lightly. I didn't approach that yet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe, and by the way, at the end of each chapter, I have a prescriptive section where, I say, here are the questions you ask yourself in order to do this or this with the friendship. So the book is descriptive and prescriptive. And one of the things, it's in the book, is that you have to ask yourself what your goals are here.
Mm-hmm.
What are you really looking for with this friend? And what is worth preserving or growing because she's a new friend.
Mm-hmm.
So you might want to really water this plant and maybe overlook the parts about the friend's politics.
I could do that. I don't know where she's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Whew, it's a whole lot of stuff really fast in this, you know,
But if there were more people you were connecting
immediate,
with, if there were more
connection.
people you were connecting with at your second home, then you probably wouldn't even pursue her, even though you enjoy her and play pickleball. Like if you had other people, other
Right.
options,
It's very hard to,
that's the
uh,
whole thing. Yeah.
There are
it's a
like,
it's a different
it's
way of life there, and I'm there full time, so it's very hard to meet someone. And when I go down there to connect and maybe go out to a show, I like to do that.
Right. Yeah.
Very hard. It's not
well,
happening.
what about joining some groups? I mean,
Unique
you
situation.
play ball, but maybe there are book clubs or certain groups of women with
Yeah.
different interests.
I go to a lot of functions down there. I
Mhm.
do. I
Good.
go,
Okay. That's tough.
but I have a good friendship base here at home.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
Great.
which is great.
That's great. Yeah.
I'll look for your book.
Yes. Yes. Does anyone else have any comments?
That'll do.
Yes. I think we all have something, I think.
Yeah, it starts very early in the female life. Like, by the time we're in first grade, we know who the it girl is, we know who
Right.
the athlete is, we know who the wallflower,
Mhm.
we really know, and we're typecast early, and that's also very difficult
Right.
because it's hard to break those labels.
Right. So when you were talking about we are attracted to people who mirror who we are, our interests, maybe where the stage in life we're
Right,
at.
exactly.
So I totally understand that. But at the same time, it's almost sometimes it's good when you don't have as much in common, like you're a good balance, temperaments are balanced, and you're not kind of attracted to the same guy or whatever it is, like the competition isn't there as much.
Yes,
in a
I think
sense.
that competition, and I did a whole study on female rivalry, which includes jealousy, competition, and envy.
Mhm.
Women raised in this culture are not competitive in a healthy way. Maybe women in sports, but we would hope it goes beyond that. But
Mhm.
it hasn't really evolved that way. And it has a lot to do, again, with this sense that if your friend achieves, you don't have a chance, which, as I keep saying, has to change. But it is refreshing to be with a friend where you're not after the same thing exactly. However, in present day society, we all know what the glittering prizes are. So,
Mhm.
we know that, and in a capitalistic society, so, having the right education, earning money, living a certain lifestyle, children if you want them, a husband or partner if you want them, but this is, a certain lifestyle, a
Mhm.
certain home. So we're all told that these are the goals. And we're also told that it's hard to come by.
Mhm.
So that creates a lot of tension, even among
Right.
best friends.
Absolutely. I feel like we're meant to live more in a community as well. Like we need the single aunt helping to raise the friends and the siblings' children and all of that. Like we really, I wish this country isn't set up in the same way, as in other countries, but I feel like that's a really great feature.
Yes, I think that the nuclear family is more isolated now as we move away from family members who could help and
Right.
neighbors we really trust. So yeah, there's all this shape shifting that goes on. It's
Right.
really very true. I
Yeah.
have of my 14 nonfiction books, I've written 3 books on the role of wife in America, and it's pretty fascinating how much that is a goal for so many of us, at least at some point in time in our life,
Right.
and what women find that yields, positive and negative,
Right.
and
And
how it affects our friendships too.
right. Again, it's so hard when to talk about the foundational friendships again, when you think of people where you've drifted away from. Let's say you think back to college and that person was the most important person on the planet, and then you think back and it's almost painful, but it's almost like, can you just sort of, it's like when you're weeding things out, you're saying thank you for this item and then you're recycling or giving it away or whatever. In a sense, can you just sort of also acknowledge, like, not that that person wasn't who you thought they were, but they might have changed along the way, is when you're talking about grieving and acceptance and moving forward, is it good when you finally get to the point where you can just say, oh, so-and-so, that was an amazing 4 years we had, and now here we go. It's not going to change my college experience or memories.
Well, among the research I did is the writings of Margaret Mead, the social anthropologist, who I think was brilliant. And what she said about marriage is that, and I reference it in the book and say that it's applicable to closest female friendships, and that is, she said women need to understand that marriage is terminable. And we do need to do that, but we don't do it enough. That we're told best friends forever. We're told that we would never, ever, walk away from a female friend, but that's not the reality. It's way more nuanced than that.
Right, right.
So
and again, it's not a failure. I think that's a key point.
Yes, well, that's what really changed from when I first started this book to when I ended up going back to it. Is that women were saying, I'm not a failure. I'm just really taking care of myself and my life. And this friendship no longer works for me.
Right.
And really owning that, which is hard to do, as I said, but really very, very honest and really a great result, positive once we get through it.
Right, right. Okay. Have any other questions or comments? If you want to put it in the chat or. Okay. Well, you are also a writer of fiction, and I'm guessing that you've woven in some of these themes with your characters in your fiction. Can you tell us about that?
There's no question that my nonfiction informs my fiction.
That must be fun, right?
Right. Well, I write dramatic fiction, and I'm always thinking of the themes that interest me so much, such as a book I wrote on mothers and daughters called You're Grounded Forever, but first let's go shopping. And as I mentioned earlier, female rivalry, Tripping the Prom Queen, and Sisters Devoted or Divided. My last 2 Palm Beach novels really revolve around sisters. Oh, something just came up, I think, Roberta, from Martha.
Okay, from Martha's asking, are there any examples of friends reconciling after a parting? That's a good question.
Yeah, that's why the subtitle is, Mended, or, how strange female friendships are mended or ended.
Right.
And for those who mend these friendships, some of the women said it's never been really quite the same, but I'm so glad that we're no longer estranged. And others say we've grown apart, but we at least preserved this friendship. So there is some of that. And in one of the, she said's in the book, 2 women, Sally and Taylor, spoke about breaking up because Taylor ended up dating Sally's brother, even though Sally said he's trouble. And they were all young married women, and it was very, very complicated. But weirdly, and I mean, it's a whole story. It's a very good one, I think. But they ended up seeing each other again after years because their teenage daughters were on the same sports team.
Yeah.
And that reconciled the friendship, but, really tiptoeing,
right.
very cautious.
Right. And Martha, her second part is what ingredients were necessary, like to have that, I'm sure humility and listening. What do you need to bring to the table to really be open to a reconciliation?
Forgiveness. Forgiveness is critical, and the ability to look inward and to see who you are as a friend, and not only who is this friend to you, but who are you to her, and who are you to yourself? What are your hopes, and what is your plan? in friendship and in life,
Right.
and to better understand it and to stop holding the bar so high.
Mhm.
Women hold the bar so high in marriages, in longstanding committed relationships, in friendships. We expect a great deal. Meanwhile, everyone has really busy, complicated lives. There's a lot of mess. It's all messy. So the reason, excuse me, that these friendships are supposed to be the panacea is because I always say if life is a pie for women, this friendship slice is one where we've really pinned our hopes and expect it to be a safe harbor.
Mhm. Right. Yeah. Then it can almost make you a little less apt to get involved with other deep friendships too. You know, your trust gets a little shattered with those
Women
things.
talked about that. You know, if you're really betrayed and it's really a very unfortunate incident, you know, women stealing husbands, boyfriends, ex-husbands, it makes it very hard to forgive and
Mhm.
and forget. But certain incidents, women will get over it. So it's a mixture.
Right. Right. Good. Oh gosh, this is so. So one of the questions I always for the podcast I always end with, and if anyone has more questions, we can definitely jump into that, is what do you reach for when you need hope? So whether it's a very difficult patch you're in or you're just having a really irritating day, what's something that you reach for?
Me personally,
Yes.
or you, the editorial you?
No, you the human being.
I reach for my family and my work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I look at, I mean, the work, I always say this to my children. I say, you know, your work is yours.
Mm-hmm.
Every relationship will come and go in some way. Your children will grow up, those little children.
Yeah.
But your work is what you have created.
Mm-hmm.
And so I look to my work.
Yeah.
And to the closest friends, those whom I trust.
That's wonderful. And you're lucky you have the kind of work where it's very missional. You know, you're pouring all of your interest and your writing skill and your insight into really, you know, helping all of us and putting some ideas out there. You know, I haven't seen a book that is so specific in female friendships, you know, like we know what that is exactly, the toxic friendships, and just permission to let it go if you need to.
Well, thank you. I have wanted every topic that I've written, like the book on mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law, for example. I couldn't find that book in the bookstore when I was a 23-year-old getting married, and I needed it. And so after 3 children and years had gone on, I still needed it. And I really wanted to know how other women felt because with my work, I think I said this earlier, the emotional longings of women really have nothing to do with how much money you have or what level of education you've earned. I'm looking at, you know, are you happy in your marriage? Are you having an affair? Are you struggling with a teenage child or grandchild? Is your friend disappointing you? This has nothing to do with how big your house is or what town you live in. And that's really what I'm looking at. You know, women really want so much and really work hard to get it. And there's some, you know, success and there's some failure.
Right. And kind of like what Carol was saying before, like the core values, we can mix it up with all different kinds of friends, but usually the real heart and soul friends have kind of the most important core values in common, even if they're sort of expressed in different ways.
Yeah,
So
to look at
you
the
know when you're comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
And what are you working on next or now?
I'm working on my new novel.
Okay. Part of the series?
Yeah, it's another Palm Beach novel.
Okay, wonderful.
I hope that comes out next year.
Yeah.
And then another nonfiction book. So busy.
Is that the nonfiction to be determined or is it a secret for now?
Oh no, I know what it is.
Okay.
So, because I haven't taught since, well, Marymount was sold to it merged, but it's now Northeastern New York.
Okay.
No longer Marymount, which is just, a very big deal. And I'm not teaching. I really have time to write, to be a
Mhm.
full-time writer. And so
Yeah.
it's just quite an experience.
Right. Wonderful. Good. Well, Susan, thank you so much. I'm excited. I'm excited to share this conversation with our podcast and YouTube audience as well. And thank you all for coming. And we'll put all this information in the show notes for the podcast. So we'll let you know where to go to find more about Susan and her work and all of her books. Okay.
Thank you so much for having
Thanks
me.
very much. Okay. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good night. Okay. 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 Okay.